The ballroom went silent the moment Clara whispered, "Lucian." Crystal glasses shattered across the vampire gala. Hundreds of immortal nobles froze in terror, because no one had spoken the Vampire King's real name in over 500 years. Clara's hands trembled as every eye turned toward her. "Who told you that name?" the king asked softly, his crimson eyes burning. I don't know," she whispered. Then the ancient portraits lining the walls slowly turned their heads toward her. Candles exploded. A locked door beneath the castle creaked open for the first time in centuries. And deep underground, something inside a black coffin suddenly opened its eyes. No one had spoken the Vampire King's real name in 500 years, until a waitress whispered it by accident. Rain hammered against the tall windows of Blackthorn Manor as Clara Whitmore adjusted the silver tray trembling in her hands. The ballroom glowed beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than she would earn in 20 lifetimes, but none of that mattered to her right now. Her shoes hurt. Her feet ached from the double shift at the bookstore cafe downtown. And the only thing in her tiny apartment refrigerator was half a carton of milk and leftover noodles she planned to stretch through the weekend. "Table 12 needs more wine," her supervisor snapped as he brushed past her. "And try not to stare at the guests. These people are important." Clara nodded quickly. Important was one word for it. Terrifying was another. Everyone at the gala moved strangely. Too graceful. Too quiet. Men in black tailored suits stood like statues beside marble pillars. Women in velvet gowns smiled, without warmth ever reaching their pale eyes. The entire mansion smelled faintly of roses, old paper, and something colder beneath it all. Something metallic she couldn't explain. Clara had worked enough elite events in Manhattan to know when rich people were hiding secrets. Tonight felt different. Tonight felt wrong. She moved carefully through the crowd as a violin quartet played somewhere above the grand staircase. Soft golden light shimmered across glasses of dark red wine. Nobody touched the food. Nobody laughed too loudly. It was as if the guests were pretending to be human instead of actually being human. Clara swallowed nervously and approached table 12. 3 men sat there dressed entirely in black. One of them looked up as she poured wine into his crystal glass. His eyes were silver, not gray, silver. The liquid nearly spilled from her shaking hand. "Careful," the man said softly. His voice felt like cold air sliding down her spine. Clara forced herself to nod. "Sorry, sir." She turned away too quickly and bumped into another server carrying champagne. Glass shattered across the marble floor. The sound echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot. Every conversation stopped instantly. Clara froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs as hundreds of eyes turned toward her at once. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, kneeling immediately to clean the broken glass. "I'm so sorry." Her hands shook as she reached for the silver tray beside her. That was when she heard it. A voice. Not from the room. Inside her head. Low. Ancient. Gentle. "Lucian." Clara blinked hard. The words slipped through her lips before she even realized she was speaking. "Lucian." Silence. Absolute silence. The chandeliers above flickered once. Then twice. Somewhere across the ballroom, a glass shattered in someone's hand. Clara slowly lifted her head. Every guest in the mansion had gone completely still. The violin music had stopped mid-note. Even the air itself felt frozen. Then the crowd parted. One man stood near the far end of the ballroom beside the massive staircase. Tall, pale, beautiful in a way that almost hurt to look at. His black suit looked sharp enough to cut shadows themselves, and his eyes glowed faintly crimson beneath the chandelier light. Clara felt her breath catch painfully in her throat. The stranger stared directly at her. Not angry, not surprised. Something worse. He looked devastated. One of the women near him suddenly whispered in horror. She said the forbidden name. Another guest stepped backward so quickly their chair tipped over. "Impossible," someone breathed. "Nobody knows that name." Clara's pulse thundered. I don't understand," she stammered softly. The tall man began walking toward her. The crowd moved aside instantly, lowering their eyes as he passed. Nobody dared remain in his path. His footsteps were silent against the marble floor. Clara wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But she couldn't move. The man stopped only a few feet away. Up close, he looked even less human. His skin was impossibly pale, smooth like carved marble beneath candlelight. Dark hair framed sharp cheekbones and eyes filled with something ancient and exhausted. "Who told you that name?" he asked quietly. His voice was calm. Too calm. Clara swallowed hard. "No one. Do not lie to me." The chandeliers flickered again. Clara flinched. "I'm not lying," she whispered. "I don't even know what I said." The man stared at her for several long seconds. Then something strange happened. One of the giant portraits hanging along the ballroom wall suddenly creaked. Clara glanced sideways. Her blood turned cold. The painted woman inside the portrait had moved. Slowly, deliberately. The figure's painted eyes shifted directly toward Clara. A guest gasped somewhere behind her. Another portrait turned next. Then another. Every ancient painting lining the ballroom walls was now facing her. Watching her, Clara stumbled backward in terror. "What is happening?" she whispered. The tall man's expression darkened instantly. "Everyone leave," he ordered softly. The command rolled through the ballroom like thunder. Nobody argued. Within seconds, the guests began rushing toward the exits, their expensive shoes clicking rapidly against marble floors. Clara stood frozen beside the shattered glass while the entire gala emptied around her. The silver-eyed man from table 12 avoided looking at her completely as he hurried away. Several women whispered prayers beneath their breath. One older man crossed himself before disappearing through the doorway. Within less than a minute, the ballroom was nearly empty. Only Clara remained beside the stranger. Him. Lucien. The name echoed painfully inside her mind now, as if the mansion itself remembered it. Clara forced herself to speak. "Who are you?" she asked quietly. The man looked at her for a long moment. Then he answered. "My name," he said softly, "is the reason people disappear." Thunder cracked outside the mansion windows. The lights flickered violently. Somewhere deep beneath the floorboards, Clara heard something enormous move in the darkness below the estate. A slow scraping sound, like stone dragging against stone. Lucien's expression changed instantly. For the first time since approaching her, he looked afraid. Not for himself, for her. He stepped closer without warning and grabbed her wrist gently. His hand felt ice cold. "You need to leave with me now," he said. Clara's pulse quickened. "Why?" Before he could answer, every candle in the ballroom suddenly went out at once. Darkness swallowed the mansion completely. And from somewhere deep below the floor, a woman's voice whispered softly through the shadows. She remembers him. The darkness lasted only 3 seconds. 3 long, suffocating seconds where Clara could hear nothing except her own heartbeat and the faint whisper still echoing beneath the floorboards. She remembers him. Then the emergency lights flickered on across the ballroom in dim amber strips along the walls. The chandeliers remained dead overhead like frozen stars. Clara's breathing turned shallow as she stared at Lucien. His hand still gripped her wrist gently, but the calm mask on his face had cracked. For the first time since she met him, the Vampire King looked genuinely unsettled. "Do not speak," he said quietly. "Do not answer if you hear voices." Another scraping sound rolled through the floor beneath them. Closer this time. Clara instinctively stepped nearer to him. "What is under this place?" she whispered. Lucien's crimson eyes shifted toward the marble staircase at the far end of the ballroom. Something that should have remained asleep. Before Clara could respond, the massive front doors of the manor burst open. Cold wind swept through the empty ballroom, carrying rainwater and the scent of wet stone. 4 figures entered together wearing long black coats lined with silver embroidery. They moved too smoothly to be human. Clara immediately recognized the silver-eyed man from earlier among them. The moment he saw Lucien holding Clara's wrist, his expression darkened. "My king," he said carefully. "The council is already aware." Lucien released Clara slowly. That was fast. Every elder in Manhattan felt the seal react. The silver-eyed vampire glanced briefly toward Clara. "They are demanding the girl be surrendered immediately." Girl, not woman, not waitress. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling colder than before. Lucien stepped slightly in front of her without even realizing he was doing it. "No," the single word hit the room like steel striking marble. The 4 vampires lowered their eyes instantly. Clara noticed it immediately. Fear. They were afraid of him. The silver-eyed vampire hesitated. "My king, if the true name has awakened," I said no. Lucien's voice remained soft, but every candle stub along the walls suddenly reignited at once. Clara jumped. The flames burned silver instead of gold now. The entire ballroom seemed to breathe around him. The silver-eyed vampire bowed his head lower. As you command. Lucien turned toward Clara again. You are leaving with me tonight. Clara blinked. I do not even know where we are going. Somewhere the council cannot reach you before sunrise. Why would they want to reach me at all? Lucien stared at her silently for several seconds. Because according to their laws, he said carefully, you should not exist. The wind outside howled against the windows. Clara felt her stomach tighten painfully. Less than 1 hour ago, she had been carrying wine trays for wealthy strangers. Now immortal people were speaking about her like she was some kind of disaster. I think I should go home, she whispered weakly. Lucien's expression changed instantly. Not anger. Frustration. Concern. Clara. The sound of her name in his voice startled her. He said it gently, like something fragile. If you leave this manor alone tonight, you will not survive until morning. The room fell silent again. Clara searched his face desperately for any sign he was exaggerating. She found none. Somewhere upstairs, a clock chimed midnight. The silver-eyed vampire glanced toward the ceiling uneasily. The city wards are failing, he warned. They are waking faster than expected. Clara frowned. Who was waking? Nobody answered immediately. Then another sound echoed through the manor. Footsteps. Slow footsteps above them on the second-floor balcony. Clara looked up sharply. A woman stood there in complete silence. Pale skin, long white gown, dark hair falling past her waist. Clara's breath caught in her throat. The woman looked exactly like the figure from one of the portraits downstairs. But that was impossible. Her eyes locked directly onto Clara's. Then the woman smiled sadly. You came back, she whispered. Every vampire in the ballroom froze instantly. The silver-eyed man took one step backward in visible fear. Lucien's face went completely pale. That is impossible, he said softly. Clara stared up at the woman. Something twisted painfully inside her chest. A strange ache. Familiar somehow. Like hearing part of a forgotten song. Do I know you? Clara whispered before she could stop herself. The woman's smile widened faintly. Not yet. Then the lights exploded. Every emergency bulb shattered at once in a burst of sparks. Clara cried out as darkness swallowed the ballroom again. This time the manor shook violently beneath their feet. The floor trembled hard enough to crack marble near the staircase. Somewhere below them, a deep metallic groan echoed upward through the walls. Lucien moved instantly. His arm wrapped around Clara as he pulled her backward away from the center of the ballroom. Close your eyes, he ordered sharply. Clara obeyed automatically. Wind roared through the manor. She heard voices suddenly. Hundreds of whispers speaking all at once in a language she did not understand. The sound flooded her mind like icy water. Ancient words. Ancient grief. Her knees nearly buckled beneath her. Then one voice rose above the others. Soft. Female. Open the door. Clara's eyes snapped open involuntarily. The ballroom had changed. The marble floor beneath her feet now glowed with silver lines spreading outward in massive circular patterns. Symbols burned across the stone like living light. Every portrait along the walls had turned completely toward her now, and at the center of the ballroom floor, a hidden door was slowly opening. Cold air poured upward from the darkness below. Clara stared down into the widening gap. Stone stairs spiraled deep underground beneath Blackthorn Manor. Far below, she saw a faint crimson light flickering in the depths. Lucien's grip tightened around her arm. Do not look at it. But Clara could not stop. Something down there felt familiar. Not safe. Never safe. But familiar. The whispers inside her head grew louder. Come home. Clara took one step toward the opening before Lucien pulled her back sharply. Enough. His voice thundered through the ballroom with sudden power. The silver symbols across the floor dimmed instantly. The hidden staircase stopped opening. Silence crashed down over the manor once more. Clara gasped softly, disoriented. Lucien turned toward the 4 vampires near the entrance. Prepare the car. My king, the silver-eyed vampire said nervously. Where will you take her? Lucien did not hesitate. To Hollowmere. Every vampire in the room stiffened visibly at the name. Clara noticed immediately. What is Hollowmere? She asked quietly. Lucien looked at her with an unreadable expression. The last place your voice was heard 500 years ago. Thunder cracked violently outside the manor windows. And somewhere far beneath the city streets, something ancient began to wake completely. Rain streaked across the black windows of the moving car as Manhattan disappeared behind them in a blur of silver lights and empty streets. Clara sat frozen in the back seat beside Lucien, her fingers clenched tightly in her lap, while thunder rolled across the sky above the city. Nobody inside the vehicle spoke. The silence felt heavy. Ancient. The silver-eyed vampire drove without turning around once, his pale hands steady on the wheel as they crossed the bridge, leaving the island behind. Clara glanced toward the dark forests surrounding the highway. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked quietly. Lucien did not look away from the rain-covered window beside him. "North." "That does not answer my question." A faint shadow of amusement crossed his face for the first time that night. "You are braver than most humans I have met." Clara frowned softly. "I think I stopped understanding what normal fear looks like around the time paintings started moving." Lucien almost smiled at that. Almost. The expression vanished before it fully appeared. The car continued through the storm in silence for another 20 minutes before Clara noticed something strange. There were no other vehicles anymore. No streetlights. No signs of civilization at all. Only endless forest stretching beneath the dark sky. "How far are we from New York?" she asked. "About 100 miles. Clara blinked. "That is impossible. We left less than 30 minutes ago." Lucien finally looked at her then, crimson eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. "You should stop using the word impossible." A cold chill slid down Clara's spine. She turned toward the front windshield again. The road ahead curved through thick black trees covered in mist. It looked less like America now and more like something forgotten by time itself. The farther they drove, the stranger the air felt. Heavy, like the entire forest was listening. Then Clara saw the gates. Massive iron gates emerged from the fog ahead without warning, towering nearly 20 feet high. Ancient symbols were carved into the black metal, glowing faintly silver beneath the rain. The moment the car approached, the gates slowly opened on their own. Clara's breath caught. Beyond them stood Hollowmere. The estate rose from the mountain cliffs like a castle pulled from a nightmare. Dark stone towers stretched into the storm clouds while hundreds of narrow windows glowed with pale candlelight. Vines crawled across ancient walls older than any building Clara had ever seen. The entire structure overlooked a massive black lake hidden beneath the rain. "This place is real," she whispered. Lucien studied her quietly. Most humans think Hollowmere is only a legend. The car rolled slowly through the gates toward the castle entrance. Clara noticed statues lining the stone pathway. Women in long robes carved from white marble. Every statue faced downward toward the lake, as if mourning something buried beneath the water. One statue near the entrance looked painfully familiar. Clara stared at it harder. As the car passed, pale face, long dark hair, sad eyes. It looked exactly like the woman she had seen standing on the balcony at Blackthorn Manor. Clara's pulse quickened instantly. "Stop the car." The silver-eyed vampire immediately obeyed. Rain hammered against the roof as Clara stepped out before anyone could stop her. Cold wind whipped through her soaked uniform while she slowly approached the marble statue near the staircase. Her breathing became shallow. Up close, the resemblance was undeniable. Same face, same eyes, same quiet sadness carved into stone. Beneath the statue, ancient words were engraved into black marble. Clara reached toward the inscription instinctively. The moment her fingertips touched the stone, the whisper returned inside her head. "Alara." Clara froze. Her heart slammed painfully against her ribs. Not Lucien this time. Another name. Alara. The world around her blurred suddenly. For one terrifying second, the rain disappeared completely. The castle vanished. Clara gasped softly as flashes exploded through her mind like broken memories. A candlelit throne room. Silver crowns. A man kneeling before her with crimson eyes filled with grief. Then screaming. Endless screaming echoing beneath stone walls. Clara stumbled backward violently. Lucien caught her before she hit the ground. "Clara." His voice sounded distant. "Look at me." Her vision slowly cleared. Rain returned. The castle stood before her once more. Clara's breathing shook uncontrollably. "I saw something." Lucien's expression hardened immediately. "What did you see?" Clara looked up at the statue again. "Who is Alara?" The question changed everything. Lucien's entire body went still. Even the rain suddenly seemed quieter around them. Behind the car, the silver-eyed vampire lowered his gaze instantly, as if he should not hear this conversation. Lucien released Clara slowly. "Nobody has spoken that name for centuries. But I heard it. That is what concerns me. Clara stared at him desperately. Tell me the truth. Lucien looked toward the lake instead of answering. The dark water below the cliffs reflected lightning beneath the storm clouds. Alara was the first queen of Hollowmere, he said quietly. She died 500 years ago. Clara swallowed hard. The woman from the ballroom. Lucien's jaw tightened slightly. Yes. Why does she look exactly like me? He did not answer immediately. The silence itself became terrifying. Finally, Lucien spoke softly. That question destroyed kingdoms once. Another cold gust swept across the cliffs. The castle doors behind them suddenly creaked open on their own. Warm candlelight spilled across the rain-soaked stone staircase. Clara turned slowly toward the entrance. More whispers filled the air now. Faint. Female. Hidden inside the wind itself. Welcome home. Clara pressed trembling fingers against her temple. I keep hearing voices. Lucien moved closer instantly. What are they saying? They think they know me. Something dark flashed through his eyes at that. Fear again. Real fear. Not for himself. For her. Inside, he said sharply. Now. Clara followed him into Hollowmere as thunder shook the mountain cliffs outside. The castle interior looked even older than the exterior. Endless corridors stretched beneath vaulted ceilings covered in silver symbols and faded murals. Candlelight flickered across black marble floors polished smooth by centuries of footsteps. Everything smelled like rain, smoke, and old paper. Clara noticed something immediately. There were no servants. No guards. No sounds of life anywhere inside the castle. Only silence. Does anyone else live here? She asked softly. Lucien walked beside her without looking away from the hallway ahead. Not anymore. The answer unsettled her more than she expected. They passed another massive portrait hanging above a fireplace. Clara stopped instantly. The painting showed Lucien standing beside a woman in silver robes beneath a moonlit sky. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. The woman in the portrait was her. Not similar. Not close. Exactly her face staring back from centuries-old paint. Clara slowly stepped toward it in disbelief. That is impossible. Lucien's expression darkened with something dangerously close to grief. I spent 500 years praying I would never see that face again. Clara turned toward him. Slowly. Who was she really? Lucien stared at the portrait for a very long time before answering. She was the only person who ever knew my real name, and the reason I buried it with her. Then somewhere deep below the castle, a massive bell began ringing on its own. The bell echoed through Hollowmere like a warning buried beneath the mountain itself. Deep, ancient, endless. Clara felt the sound vibrate through the castle floor beneath her shoes as candle flames along the corridor flickered violently. Once, twice. Then every flame turned blue at the exact same moment. Lucien's expression darkened instantly. That should not be happening yet. Clara looked toward the shadowed hallway stretching deeper into the castle. What is the bell? A seal. His answer came too quickly, too carefully. Clara crossed her arms tightly against the cold creeping through the corridor. You keep giving me half-truths. Lucien turned toward her slowly. Candlelight carved sharp shadows across his pale face. Because the full truth has destroyed stronger minds than yours. Clara should have stepped back. Every instinct warned her to. But exhaustion and confusion were beginning to overpower fear. Try me, she whispered. For a long moment Lucien simply stared at her. Then another bell toll rolled through the castle. Louder this time. The walls themselves seemed to groan beneath the sound. Somewhere above them, dust drifted softly from the ceiling. Lucien exhaled slowly. Come with me. He led her through endless hallways lined with portraits older than American history itself. Kings, queens, noble families dressed in black velvet and silver crowns. Every painted face carried the same hollow stillness in their eyes. Clara noticed something strange as they walked. Nearly every portrait had scratches carved through the lower corners of the canvas, specifically through the names. Why are the names destroyed? She asked quietly. Lucien did not slow his pace. Because names hold power. Clara frowned softly. That sounds like superstition. It is older than superstition. They descended a spiral staircase lit only by candles floating several inches above the stone walls without chains or holders. Clara tried not to stare at them. She was failing. The deeper they moved beneath Hollowmere, the colder the air became. Ancient books lined the lower corridors from floor to ceiling behind iron gates. Some looked so old they might crumble if touched. Others were chained shut entirely. Clara glanced at one shelf while passing and froze abruptly. Every book's spine displayed the same symbol, glowing faintly silver. A circle surrounding a crown pierced by a single vertical line. The exact same symbol she had seen glowing beneath the ballroom floor in Manhattan. I have seen that mark before. Lucian stopped instantly. Where? On the floor at Blackthorn Manor. The silence that followed felt dangerous. Describe it. Clara hesitated. A crown inside a silver circle. Lucian's eyes darkened. Did you touch it? No, that was technically true. She had almost stepped onto it before he stopped her. Lucian looked relieved for the first time in hours. Good. Clara frowned harder. Why does everyone act like I am carrying a bomb? Lucian stared at her carefully. Because 500 years ago, a woman with your face nearly ended this world. The words settled heavily between them. Clara opened her mouth to respond, but Lucian had already started walking again. At the end of the corridor stood enormous iron doors carved with hundreds of names. Thousands perhaps. Some were written clearly. Others had been violently scratched away until only scars remained in the metal. Clara slowed as they approached. One name near the center immediately caught her attention. Lucian Vale. Unlike the others, his name had been covered completely in black wax seals marked with silver thread. Clara stared at it uneasily. Why is your name sealed? Lucian reached toward the doors. Because I buried it. The massive iron doors slowly opened inward with a deep metallic groan. Warm firelight spilled across the stone floor beyond them. Clara stepped inside cautiously and immediately stopped breathing for a second. The chamber was enormous. Circular walls stretched upward nearly 50 feet beneath a domed ceiling painted with silver constellations. Thousands of candles floated through the air like stars trapped indoors. At the center of the room stood a massive black mirror framed in silver thorns. Clara felt dizzy the moment she looked at it. The mirror reflected nothing. Not her. Not Lucian. Only darkness swirling beneath the glass surface like smoke underwater. What is this place? She whispered. The Chamber of Names. Lucian walked slowly toward the mirror. Every ruler of Hollowmere once stood here during the binding ceremony. Clara remained near the doorway. Binding ceremony? Lucian's reflectionless figure stopped beside the black mirror. Long ago, names carried more than identity. They carried memory, loyalty, power. His voice echoed softly through the chamber. To speak a ruler's true name willingly meant absolute trust. Clara looked toward the sealed name carved into the iron doors outside. And if someone betrayed that trust? Lucian's expression became distant. Ancient grief flickered behind his crimson eyes. Entire kingdoms burned. The floating candles above them suddenly dimmed. Clara noticed the temperature dropping again. Her breath became faintly visible in the air. Then the mirror moved. Clara stiffened instantly. A ripple spread slowly across the black surface like water disturbed by unseen fingers. Lucian turned sharply toward it. No, the mirror rippled again. Then a woman's voice whispered softly from inside the glass. You should have let me die. Clara's blood turned cold. Lucian's entire body went rigid. Do not answer it, he warned immediately. But Clara could not look away from the mirror. The voice sounded heartbreaking. Familiar somehow. Who is that? She whispered. The black surface began swirling faster. Shapes formed slowly beneath the darkness. A woman standing in moonlight. Long dark hair blowing across silver robes. Her face hidden beneath shadows. Lucian, the voice whispered again. She remembers. Clara suddenly felt pressure building inside her chest. Painful. Sharp. Her heartbeat accelerated violently as fragmented images flashed across her mind again. Snow falling across castle walls. Silver crowns. A man kneeling beside a burning throne. Then blood-red roses scattered across black water. Clara gasped softly and stumbled backward. Lucian crossed the room instantly, catching her before she collapsed. Look at me, he ordered sharply. Not the mirror. Clara's vision blurred. I know her. Lucian's face lost all color. That is impossible. I know her, Clara repeated weakly. She is sad. The candles throughout the chamber suddenly exploded brighter. Hundreds of silver flames surged upward at once. The mirror cracked down the center with a deafening sound. Lucian pulled Clara behind him immediately as black smoke poured from the broken glass. Then the woman appeared. Not fully. only her reflection standing inside the fractured mirror surface. Pale face, dark eyes filled with centuries of grief. Clara stared at her in shock. It was her own face staring back. Older somehow. Colder. Alara, Lucian whispered hoarsely. The woman inside the mirror looked directly at Clara. You were never supposed to return. Then every candle in the chamber went out. Darkness swallowed the chamber so completely that Clara could no longer tell where the walls ended or where the floor beneath her feet began. For one terrifying second, the world felt empty, silent except for her breathing and the faint echo of Lucian's voice somewhere beside her. Stay close to me. Then the mirror screamed. The sound tore through the chamber like cracking ice across a frozen lake. Clara flinched hard as silver light burst suddenly through the darkness. Candles reignited one by one across the circular room, their blue flames trembling violently in the cold air. The black mirror at the center of the chamber was no longer whole. Massive fractures spread across its surface like shattered veins, and behind the cracked glass, the woman was gone. Clara's chest tightened painfully. Where did she go? Lucian did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the broken mirror with terrifying focus. She was never truly there. Then what did we see? A memory. Clara swallowed hard. Memories are not supposed to speak. Lucian's expression darkened. These ones do. Another low bell echoed somewhere deep beneath Hollowmere. The sound seemed closer now. Clara noticed the floating candles, drifting lower around them, almost as if they were being pulled downward by something beneath the castle. The silver flames bent toward the floor. Lucian noticed it too. We need to leave this chamber. Clara hesitated. Not until you explain what is happening to me. Lucian finally looked at her fully. Exhaustion sat heavily behind his crimson eyes now. Ancient exhaustion. I am trying to prevent history from repeating itself. Clara shook her head slowly. You keep talking like I am someone else. The silence that followed answered her before he spoke. Because part of you is. Clara felt cold all over again. That does not make sense. No, Lucian admitted softly. It does not. He stepped closer to the shattered mirror carefully, as though even standing near it carried danger. 500 years ago, this castle belonged to a queen named Alara Vale. Clara frowned immediately. Vale? She was my wife. The words hit harder than Clara expected. Something painful twisted sharply beneath her ribs. Not jealousy, not fear, grief. Deep and sudden and impossible to explain. Lucian noticed her reaction instantly. You feel it too. Clara looked away from him. I do not know what I feel anymore. Rain battered the castle windows far above them, while thunder rolled across the mountain cliffs outside. The storm had not weakened once since arriving at Hollowmere. If anything, it felt stronger now. Almost alive. Lucian reached toward the broken mirror and lightly touched one of the silver fractures running through the glass. Alara possessed something rare among our kind, he said quietly. She could hear names. Clara blinked. What does that mean? Most immortals guard their true names carefully because names contain memory and power. But Alara, his voice lowered slightly. She could hear the truth hidden inside them. Clara slowly approached the shattered mirror despite every instinct warning her not to. And I can do the same thing. Lucian looked at her carefully. Tonight you spoke my buried name without ever hearing it before. Clara's stomach tightened. That should not be possible. Exactly. The mirror suddenly rippled again. Just once. Clara froze. Instantly. A faint reflection appeared briefly inside the cracked glass. Not the woman this time. A lake beneath moonlight. Black water stretching endlessly into darkness. Then the image vanished. Lucian immediately stepped between Clara and the mirror. Enough. The silver cracks dimmed instantly beneath his voice. Clara stared at him in disbelief. You can control it? Only barely. Another distant bell echoed through Hollowmere. This time Clara noticed something new beneath the sound. Whispers. Hundreds of whispers threading through the stone walls themselves. Too faint to fully understand. Yet one phrase repeated over and over. The queen has returned. Clara pressed both hands against her temples immediately. They are getting louder. Lucian crossed the room toward her instantly. Do not listen to them. I cannot stop. The whispers swirled harder around her now like invisible wind. Fragments of voices. Fragments of memories. A silver crown placed onto trembling hands. A dark throne room filled with candles. Someone crying softly behind locked doors. Clara gasped sharply as another image flashed through her mind without warning. Lucian standing beneath snowfall wearing black ceremonial robes while blood-red roses burned around him in silver fire. The vision disappeared instantly. Clara nearly collapsed from dizziness. Lucian caught her before she fell. "Clara." His voice sounded closer now. "Worried. Look at me." Her breathing shook violently. "I saw you." Lucian stiffened. "What did you see?" Clara stared into his crimson eyes, struggling to separate memory from imagination. "You were alone." Something unreadable passed across his face then. "Pain, perhaps. I have been alone for a very long time." The honesty in his voice unsettled her more than anything supernatural she had witnessed tonight. Before Clara could answer, the chamber doors suddenly slammed shut behind them with enough force to shake the walls. Both of them turned sharply. The floating candles throughout the room flickered wildly again. Then every single flame pointed toward the center of the chamber. Toward the mirror. Clara's pulse quickened. The shattered glass had begun glowing from within. Not silver this time. Crimson. Deep red light pulsed slowly beneath the fractures like a heartbeat. Lucian's expression changed instantly. Fear. Real fear. "No," he whispered. The mirror cracked again. A long, jagged fracture spread across the surface with a sharp metallic sound. Clara stepped backward instinctively. "What is happening?" Lucian grabbed her wrist immediately. "We are leaving now." The chamber floor trembled violently beneath them. Bookshelves along the walls rattled as dust rained from the ceiling above. Then the whispers stopped completely. Silence crashed through the room. Total silence. And from inside the mirror, a man's voice finally spoke. "You should have killed her when she returned." Clara froze. The voice sounded ancient. Cold. Inhuman. Lucian slowly turned toward the glowing mirror, his jaw tightening visibly. "You are not awake enough to threaten me yet." Soft laughter echoed from the cracked glass. "And yet the seal weakens every hour she breathes." Clara stared between them in confusion and terror. "Who was that?" Lucian did not answer. The red glow inside the mirror intensified. Shadows moved beneath the fractured surface now. Tall shapes twisting unnaturally behind the glass. The voice spoke again. "She remembers more than you think, Lucian." Clara suddenly felt a sharp pain behind her eyes. Another vision struck instantly. A giant underground chamber beneath Hollowmere. Black water surrounding a stone coffin chained beneath silver symbols. Then a woman's voice whispering softly through darkness. "Do not let him wake." Clara gasped and stumbled backward. Lucian caught her again before she hit the floor. "What did you see?" Clara looked up at him in panic. "There is something under this castle." The mirror laughed softly. Now she remembers the prison. Lucy, the chamber trembled beneath Hollowmere as crimson light pulsed through the shattered mirror like a living heartbeat. Clara could still feel Lucian's hand gripping her arm tightly, colder now than before, almost trembling beneath his controlled expression. The ancient voice inside the mirror had gone silent again, but the silence itself felt worse. Heavy. Waiting. Clara forced herself to breathe steadily despite the pressure building behind her eyes. "What prison?" she whispered. Lucian did not answer immediately. His crimson gaze remained locked on the fractured glass as shadows twisted slowly beneath its surface. Then the mirror spoke again. "Tell her the truth, Lucian. Tell her what she sealed beneath this mountain." Clara's pulse quickened sharply. "What does that mean?" Lucian finally turned toward her. Candlelight flickered violently across his pale face. For the first time since she met him, he looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical strength. This was older. The exhaustion of someone carrying grief too long. 500 years ago, he said quietly, there was a war inside this kingdom. Clara listened carefully while distant thunder rolled above the mountain cliffs outside Hollowmere. Not between humans and vampires, Lucian continued. Something older. The cracked mirror rippled faintly. A king who wished to become eternal. The voice whispered mockingly. Lucian ignored it. There were ancient forces buried beneath this world long before my kind ruled these lands. Hollowmere was built over one of them. Clara swallowed hard. The thing beneath the castle. Lucian nodded once. Its true name was erased centuries ago because names give it strength. Most immortals now simply call it the Hollow King. The chamber temperature dropped instantly the moment the title was spoken. Every floating candle dimmed. Clara noticed frost slowly spreading across the black mirror frame. What is it? She whispered. Lucien's expression darkened. A creature that feeds on memory. Identity. Names. Clara felt sick suddenly. That is impossible. So is hearing a name buried for 500 years. The mirror cracked louder this time. Clara flinched. The ancient voice laughed softly beneath the fractured glass. She remembers enough already. Lucien stepped directly in front of the mirror. Silence. The chamber shook violently beneath the force of his voice. The crimson glow inside the mirror dimmed slightly. Clara stared at him. You fought it before. Lucien did not answer. That alone was answer enough. Clara looked away from the broken mirror toward the silver constellations painted across the domed ceiling overhead. The symbols seemed to move slightly beneath the candlelight now, shifting slowly like stars rotating across a night sky. Where does Alara fit into this? She asked carefully. Lucien closed his eyes briefly before answering. She was the only person powerful enough to seal the Hollow King away. Clara frowned. How? Lucien looked at her then. Really looked at her. By giving up her own name. Silence filled the chamber again. Clara tried to understand what he meant. I do not. The word stopped suddenly as another memory flashed violently through her mind. Silver chains wrapped around black stone. A woman kneeling inside a massive underground chamber beneath Hollowmere. Long dark hair. Silver robes stained with ash. And Lucien screaming her name while ancient symbols burned across the walls around them. Clara gasped sharply. Her knees weakened instantly. Lucien caught her before she hit the floor again. Clara. His voice sounded distant through the roaring in her ears. What did you see? Her breathing shook violently. You were trying to stop her. Lucien froze completely. Clara looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. She sealed herself away. The entire chamber went silent. Even the whispers stopped. Lucien slowly released her arms. You should not remember that. But I do. Clara pressed trembling fingers against her forehead as fragments continued flashing through her mind. Not full memories. Pieces. Emotions. Fear. Grief. Love so deep it physically hurt. Who was she to you? Lucien stared at her for a long moment before answering softly. Everything. The single word shattered something inside Clara's chest she could not explain. Another sharp pain rushed through her mind immediately afterward. This time stronger. Clara stumbled backward away from him as the room blurred violently around her. Suddenly, she was no longer standing inside the Chamber of Names. She stood somewhere else entirely. Snow fell softly around massive castle towers beneath a silver moon. Hollowmere, but alive, bright, filled with music and laughter echoing through open windows. Clara looked down at herself in confusion. Silver silk sleeves covered her hands. A crown rested against dark hair spilling across her shoulders. Then footsteps approached behind her. Lucien, younger somehow, not in appearance. In expression, hope still lived in his eyes. He smiled softly as he reached her beneath the snowfall. You should not stand alone in the cold, Alara. Clara's heart stopped. The vision shattered instantly. She collapsed against the chamber floor, gasping for breath as reality returned around her. Lucien knelt beside her immediately. Clara. She looked at him in horror. That was not a memory. Lucien's face had gone completely pale. What do you mean? Clara struggled to breathe evenly. I was inside her. The broken mirror pulsed crimson again. Louder now. Hungrier somehow. Of course she was. The voice inside it whispered softly. The soul remembers what the mind forgets. Lucien rose slowly to his feet. Rage flickered across his expression for the first time. You will not touch her. The mirror laughed quietly. You said the same thing 5 centuries ago. Every candle in the chamber suddenly flared upward in violent silver fire. The cracked mirror surface rippled again, and another shape appeared beneath the glass. Taller than before. Human-shaped, but wrong somehow. Shadows poured from its outline like smoke underwater. Clara felt pure dread the moment she saw it move. Lucien, she whispered weakly. He stepped directly in front of her instantly. Do not look at it. But Clara already had. And the moment her eyes met the shadow inside the mirror, another voice suddenly filled her mind. Older than language itself. Colder than death. Alara, open the gate for me once. Clara pressed both hands against her ears immediately. Make it stop. Lucien's expression hardened with terrifying focus. He raised one hand toward the mirror, and silver symbols burst across the chamber walls instantly, glowing bright enough to blind. Ancient words echoed through the room in a language Clara did not recognize. The mirror screamed. Not the soft cracking sounds from before. This sounded alive. Furious. The shadow beneath the glass recoiled violently as silver light spread across every fracture. Then everything went dark again. The mirror fell silent. Completely silent. Lucien lowered his hand slowly, breathing harder than before. Clara stared at him in shock. What did you do? Bought us time. The floating candles above them flickered weakly now, several extinguishing completely. Lucien looked exhausted suddenly, as though holding the seal together required enormous effort. Clara slowly stood again despite her trembling legs. You still have not told me why I look exactly like her. Lucien remained silent. Lucien. He looked toward the shattered mirror one last time before answering softly. Because Alara did not truly die beneath Hollowmere. Clara's breath caught. Then where is she? Lucien's crimson eyes lifted slowly toward her face. Part of her, he whispered, is standing in front of me now. Clara stared at Lucien as the words settled heavily through the ruined chamber. Part of her is standing in front of me now. The floating candles above them flickered weakly, casting silver shadows across the cracked mirror and the ancient symbols glowing faintly along the walls. Nothing about this felt real anymore. Less than 24 hours ago, she had been serving wine to wealthy strangers in Manhattan. Now an immortal king was telling her she carried part of a dead queen's soul inside her. Clara took a slow step backward. No, her voice sounded small against the massive chamber. That is not possible. Lucien did not argue. Somehow that made it worse. The human mind rejects things it cannot survive understanding all at once, he said quietly. I remember that feeling. Clara shook her head harder. Stop talking to me like I am her. The moment the words left her mouth, pain shot violently through her chest. Clara gasped softly and grabbed the edge of a stone table nearby for balance. Another memory flashed behind her eyes instantly. A candlelit room filled with roses. A silver ring resting against pale fingers. Lucien kneeling before her while snow fell softly outside towering windows. You are not Alara, his voice whispered through the memory. You are my future. The vision shattered. Clara stumbled backward, breathing hard. Lucien moved toward her immediately, but stopped himself halfway. What did you see? Clara stared at him in disbelief. You proposed to her. Silence swallowed the chamber. Lucien's expression changed slowly from concern to something quieter. Sadness, perhaps. You should not be able to see that memory. Clara laughed weakly, though nothing about it sounded amused. Apparently, there are a lot of things I should not be able to do. Another low bell echoed beneath Hollowmere. Louder now. Closer. The fractured mirror pulsed crimson for a single terrifying second before falling dark again. Lucien turned sharply toward it. The seal is weakening faster. Clara pressed trembling fingers against her temples. Because of me? Lucien remained silent too long. Clara looked away from him immediately. Wonderful. Clara, do not. Her voice cracked softly. Do not look at me like I am some tragedy you already survived once. The words hit him harder than she expected. Lucien's face became completely unreadable. Ancient walls sliding back into place around emotions he clearly did not allow himself to show anymore. You think I wanted this? He asked quietly. Clara crossed her arms tightly against the cold. I do not know what you want. Lucien stared toward the shattered mirror instead of her. Neither do I anymore. The chamber trembled again beneath their feet. Dust drifted softly from the domed ceiling overhead. Clara noticed new fractures spreading through the silver symbols painted across the floor now. Hairline cracks glowing faintly red from underneath. Something beneath the castle was pushing upward. What happens if the seal breaks? She asked softly. Lucien's eyes darkened immediately. The Hollow King escapes. And then, his silence answered enough. Clara swallowed hard. You really think I caused this? No, Lucien looked at her carefully. I think your return triggered something that was already waiting. Clara frowned. Return. The word sounded wrong every time he used it. I am not some reincarnated queen. You are not entirely separate from her either. Clara turned away from him sharply. That sentence does not even make sense. It was never supposed to. The broken mirror suddenly rippled again. Both of them froze instantly. Silver mist spilled slowly from the cracks across its surface this time, curling through the air like smoke beneath moonlight. Then a woman's voice whispered softly through the chamber. Lucien. Clara's pulse quickened. The voice sounded closer now. Weaker somehow. Not threatening. Sad. Lucian stepped toward the mirror cautiously. Alara. Hearing him say the name aloud changed something inside Clara immediately. Another sharp ache spread through her chest. Familiarity. Longing. Grief. She hated it. The silver mist thickened slowly until the outline of a woman formed near the broken glass. Transparent. Fragile. Like moonlight trying to hold a human shape. Clara stared in shock as Alara appeared before them once more. Her face looked exactly like Clara's reflection in a mirror touched by centuries of sorrow. You should not have brought her here, Alara whispered softly. Lucian's jaw tightened. I had no choice. Alara looked toward Clara then. Not with fear. Not anger. Compassion. You are remembering too quickly. Clara stepped closer despite herself. What are you? Alara's expression saddened further. A fragment. The answer sent cold dread through the chamber. Clara's voice lowered. A fragment of what? Alara looked toward Lucian before answering. The woman who failed. Lucian immediately stepped between them. You did not fail. Alara's ghostly form smiled faintly. You still lie beautifully after all these centuries. Clara watched them carefully. The pain between them felt enormous. Ancient. What happened 500 years ago? She whispered. Alara's silver form flickered weakly. I opened the gate. The chamber went completely still. Lucian closed his eyes briefly. Clara's pulse thundered. The gate to what? Alara slowly looked toward the floor beneath them, toward the depths of Hollowmere hidden below endless stone. To him, another violent tremor shook the chamber instantly. The mirror cracked louder. Crimson light flashed through the fractures again. Alara's expression changed immediately. Fear. He hears us. Lucian moved. Closer to the spirit. The seal is collapsing. Alara nodded faintly. Because she remembers. Clara stared between them desperately. Someone explain what is happening. Alara looked directly at her then. 5 centuries ago, I tried to save someone I loved. Her eyes shifted briefly toward Lucian. Instead, I unleashed something ancient beneath Hollowmere. The chamber temperature dropped sharply again. Frost spread across the shattered mirror frame, while distant whispers echoed through the walls. Alara's voice weakened. To stop it, I sealed part of my soul into the prison itself. Clara felt dizzy suddenly. That is impossible. Alara smiled sadly. You keep saying that. Another memory exploded through Clara's mind without warning. A massive underground lake beneath Hollowmere. Silver chains wrapped around black stone pillars. Alara kneeling before a giant sealed door covered in ancient names. Then Lucian screaming as silver light consumed the entire chamber. Clara cried out softly as the vision vanished. Lucian caught her instantly before she collapsed. Clara. She looked up at him trembling. She divided her soul. Alara's ghostly form flickered violently now, almost transparent. Part remained imprisoned with the Hollow King. Her eyes slowly lifted toward Clara, and part escaped. Clara's blood turned cold. Into me. Alara nodded once. The chamber shook harder than before. Cracks raced suddenly across the domed ceiling overhead as crimson light pulsed beneath the floor. Then somewhere deep below Hollowmere, a massive door slowly began to open. The sound beneath Hollowmere did not resemble stone moving or machinery turning. It sounded older, slower, like something buried beneath the mountain had finally opened its eyes after centuries of waiting. Clara stood frozen in the chamber of names while the floor beneath her trembled hard enough to crack silver lines through the ancient marble. Dust drifted from the domed ceiling overhead. The floating candles spun slowly in nervous circles like frightened birds trapped indoors. Alara's ghost flickered violently beside the shattered mirror now, her silver form growing weaker with every passing second. It is beginning again, she whispered softly. Lucian immediately turned toward the chamber doors. We do not have much time. Clara stared at him in disbelief. You say that every 5 minutes without explaining anything useful. Another deep tremor shook Hollowmere. This time the sound came with whispers. Thousands of whispers rising through the castle walls like voices traveling underwater. Clara pressed trembling fingers against her ears instantly. The voices were louder now. Hungry. Repeating the same phrase over and over. Open the gate. Lucian noticed her reaction immediately. Do not listen to them. I cannot stop hearing them. His expression darkened further. That means the prison recognizes you. Clara laughed weakly despite the fear clawing through her chest. That sentence should not be something a person hears in real life. Alara's ghost looked toward Clara sadly. Nothing about this life is real anymore. The chamber suddenly lurched violently sideways. Clara stumbled as a loud cracking sound echoed from somewhere deep below the castle foundations. Lucien grabbed her arm instantly to steady her. The lower seal has broken. Clara looked toward the floor in alarm. Crimson light now glowed faintly through the fractures spreading across the marble beneath their feet. It pulsed slowly, like veins carrying blood through stone. Alara's silver form dimmed further. He is reaching upward. Lucien's jaw tightened. Then we seal the gate before he fully wakes. Clara stared between them desperately. How? Silence followed. And in that silence, Clara already knew she would hate the answer. Lucien slowly looked at her. You are the key. The words settled heavily through the chamber. Clara stepped backward immediately. No, Clara. No, her voice cracked this time. I am not helping seal ancient monsters beneath castles. I am a waitress from Brooklyn. Alara smiled faintly. You were once a queen who said the exact same thing. Clara looked sharply toward her. Stop talking like I am her. Another memory struck instantly. A silver throne room. Lucien kneeling before Alara while rain hammered stained glass windows behind him. You are not responsible for this burden, he whispered to her softly. Alara smiling through tears. Then why does it keep choosing me? Clara gasped sharply as the vision shattered. Lucien caught the look on her face immediately. What did you see? Clara shook her head hard. I do not want these memories. Lucien's voice lowered carefully. Neither did she. The pain in those words stunned Clara silent for a moment. Then the shattered mirror suddenly pulsed crimson again. This time the ancient voice returned instantly, louder than before. You cannot stop what she already began. The silver flames throughout the chamber bent sharply toward the mirror. Frost spread across the walls in twisting black patterns. Lucien stepped protectively in front of Clara immediately. Stay behind me. Soft laughter echoed through the chamber. You still believe you can protect her from herself? Clara noticed something terrifying then. The shadow beneath the mirror's surface had grown clearer. Taller. Human-shaped now. Two burning crimson eyes slowly opened beneath the fractured glass. Clara's breath caught painfully. The Hollow King was waking. Lucien, she whispered weakly. He did not look away from the mirror. Do not speak to it. The shadow smiled slowly beneath the glass. She remembers me already. Clara suddenly felt cold fingers brush against the edges of her thoughts. Not physically, mentally. Ancient memories stirred violently inside her mind again. A giant underground chamber beneath Hollowmere. Black water stretching endlessly into darkness. Silver chains wrapped around enormous stone doors covered in names. And Alara standing before them crying, while crimson light consumed the walls around her. Clara staggered backward from the vision gasping. I saw the prison again. The Hollow King laughed softly. Because part of her still belongs there. Lucien's eyes flashed dangerously bright crimson. Enough. Silver symbols exploded across the chamber walls instantly, glowing so bright Clara had to shield her eyes. The mirror screamed again as the shadow recoiled violently beneath the glass. But this time the silver light flickered weakly after only a few seconds. Lucien stumbled slightly. Clara stared at him in shock. You are weakening. He did not deny it. The seal draws strength from my name. Clara frowned immediately. Your name? Lucien slowly looked toward the black wax seal carved across his own name outside the chamber doors. I buried my true name centuries ago to help contain him. The Hollow King laughed again. And now she has spoken it aloud. Clara felt sick instantly. I broke the seal. Lucien turned toward her sharply. No, but I did. You awakened something already cracking long before you arrived. Another violent tremor shook the chamber hard enough to extinguish half the floating candles overhead. The mirror fractures spread wider instantly. Clara saw black water moving beneath the glass now. Endless black water. Alara's spirit looked terrified suddenly. He is opening the lower gate. Lucien immediately grabbed Clara's wrist. We are going beneath the castle. Clara stared at him in disbelief. Absolutely not. If the final seal breaks, Hollowmere falls. You keep saying things like I know what they mean. Lucien moved closer, his voice lowering carefully. 500 years ago, Alara sealed the Hollow King using 3 bindings. Her soul, my true name, and the gate of Hollowmere beneath the mountain. Clara's pulse quickened. And now, Lucien looked toward the spreading crimson fractures beneath the floor. Now all three are failing. Silence crashed through the chamber again. Clara slowly understood the truth forming around her like ice. You think I can fix it? Lucien did not answer immediately. That silence hurt worse than honesty. Alara's spirit drifted closer to Clara weakly. You already carry part of the seal inside you. Clara looked toward her in panic. I do not know how to use any of this. Alara smiled sadly. Neither did I. Another bell suddenly rang beneath Hollowmere, louder than ever before. The chamber doors burst open on their own as freezing wind rushed upward from the depths below the castle. Somewhere far beneath them, massive chains began breaking one by one.